What's up guys, Reese here from reese3d.com. In this video we are going to create a studio lighting for this character using Arnold rendering engine in Maya. You can also download the same file that I'm working here using the link in the description. So before we start creating the lights, we are going to create a simple background that looks like a studio environment, like an infinite background. So for creating that, we will go to our Create menu, Polygons, and Plane. So let me make the plane bigger, and I'm going to reduce the number of divisions. I'll make them as 1, 1. I want to make it a bit more bigger here. That looks good. And I will use this edge in the back, okay? And I will extrude that. All right, so now I can select this middle one, shift right click and choose bevel edge. I'm going to increase the segments and maybe I can just reduce the fraction a little bit, not too much. Looking good. Now at this point we can either use a perspective camera with something like a bookmark so that you will know exactly which frame you're looking at, or we can create a separate camera and use that camera for rendering all the time. Right? So for doing that, I'm going to create, in my case, I'm going to create a separate camera. So I'll go to Create, Cameras, and Camera. So we have our camera created right in the center there. And I can just bring this back and pull it up. All right. I'm going to press the space bar to get this 4 view here. And I'm going to use this view, which is currently our side view. For this camera. So I'll go to Panels and Perspective. There it is, our camera 1. Looking okay. But we can also just make more changes to this by just working with this view. And I'm actually going to put a resolution gate so that we will know exactly what content we will be limiting to our camera view. So for doing that, we have our resolution gate here. That looks good. Now you can see that we have a little extra space in both these sides. So I'm going to just select this background that we created. I'm going to scale it out like so. Okay, so now I can actually have a little bit of angle as well, and still the outside is not being shown in my camera. That looks good. Fine. So that's my final position. Now what I can also do is I can actually select this camera and lock this camera, okay, so that I will not make any accidental changes to it. So let's say right click and lock selected. Now I can also rename this if I want. Let's say Arnold camera. Looks good. Fine. So now I want to start creating lights. Now we can either use our Maya lights or we can also use Arnold lights. So in my case, I'm going to choose the Arnold lights. Okay. So to access the lights, we need to go to Arnold, and there we have lights. So we can either create something like a Skydome light. That's just one single click and we get the entire light, and we can actually do a render. Now keep in mind, with Arnold rendering, it takes a lot of time. So through the magic of editing, I'm going to make this faster. Now, the Skydome light is something that you can use for exteriors. When you have like houses or buildings, then you can just simply click on this one light and you get light for the entire area. But now for our case, we're not going to use this. Okay. Now one more little thing. If you don't see the same result, you need to check here. Maybe you're in Maya software. That's why you may not see the end result like what I'm showing you here. In that case, you can go to Arnold and then you can try rendering again. So you will definitely get this result. But for this character, we're not going to use that. We're going to create a studio lighting using 3-point light, right? So let me just get rid of the Skydome light. I'll go to Window, Outliner, and there we have our Skydome light. Okay, so I'm going to select that and delete it, and we are done. Now just to make sure that we got it deleted, we can actually render it one more time. So this time with Arnold rendering engine, you should see nothing. So it would look totally black. Fine. So let's start creating our lights. Okay. So let me press Escape to cancel this out. All right. So let's start creating the lights here. I'll go to Arnold, lights and area light. Now when we create these lights, we want to preview them as well, right? So let me just bring this slightly away from here, and instead of just going to render here every single time we make a change, Arnold has an interactive rendering preview here. Okay, so I'll go to Arnold and click the render button here. So that gives us a real-time preview of what kind of result that we have here. Now you can see that it actually does some rendering here, so watch out for that. If something that you are changing is not showing up here, that means it is actually doing some calculations in the background. Now you can stop this in between if you want, just by clicking on this red button, and you can resume it when you're ready. Now keep in mind, Arnold is a power-hungry rendering engine, meaning that it needs a huge amount of computing power. So if your computer is old or it's not powerful enough, you need to give a lot more time for Arnold to process. So I'll just click on this play here, and I want to just move this up. You can see that when I do the change itself, I can see the effect here. All right, so let me just make this light a bit bigger. I'll bring this back here, and I want to make it bigger. Now when I make it bigger, you can see that the light does not become more brighter. Okay, so that's because of the default behavior of these lights. So let's go to attribute editor, and then we want to make a small change here. Okay, so if I turn off this normalize, there you go, you start to see more light there. Okay, now I can actually dock this Arnold render view to the left side of my viewport so that I can just preview the render at the same time while working with the object. So I'll go ahead and click on this and drag it all the way here. That's it. Perfect. Let me just click and drag just to give a little bit more space here for this viewport. Looks good. So now you can see that we have just one single light, which is just in the front of the character, just giving light to the entire character. Now, we want to create 3-point lighting, right? So for that, we're going to start with our key light. So this is going to act as my key light. So let me just press space bar here, and I can just go back to my perspective view. Keep in mind, this is our Arnold camera that we created, and this is our perspective view. Now this Arnold camera, we locked it, so we cannot make any changes to this viewport, but the perspective view is unlocked for us, so we can actually make whatever kind of changes that we want here. And at the same time, we can preview the final result in the Arnold's preview here. Okay, so our camera is straight here. Actually, the camera's here. If you want, you can make it bigger just to preview. Let me just go back to the object mode, select this guy. Oh, I can't make him bigger because he's locked. Let me just unlock the scale because that's not going to affect. So go unlock here. There you go. Scale. Make it bigger so we know where our camera is. Good. So I'm going to make the key light coming from the left side of the camera. So I'll select this guy and move it to the left. And it needs to point towards the character there. I can actually bring this a bit backwards. That's it. I'm going to make it bigger just to make it more brighter as well. Now keep in mind, the place where this light is, this area will have a darker difference between brightness and darkness, because behind the light there's not going to be any light, so it's just giving light in just one direction. Okay, similar like our area light that we have in our Maya as well. So keep in mind, when you place the camera, you should not show this area. Okay, otherwise that area will have greater difference between the brightness and darkness. It won't look nice. All right, so now I can also just bring this light a little bit up and make the light come from slightly higher area. All right, so that's our key light, and I want to make it a bit more intense, a bit more bright, so I can actually go to my attribute editor of the light, and I can increase either the intensity or the exposure. So exposure gives a bit more softer light. This is in my opinion. So I'll make the intensity to be 2. Okay, and I can also make the exposure to be 2. That's too much. Maybe just 1 should be enough. All right. But just for your information, I'm using an Arnold standard shader as the texture for this character. So it looks more like a wax model. All right, so I think that's fine. If needed, we can increase the exposure a bit more later. And I'm also going to give you a slight color here, like a bluish color, but not that much, just a little bit. Instead of just plain white, that's all. Okay, that looks good. Now I want to create one more light that's going to be our fill light. Basically, fill light we create for the purpose of just avoiding the shadows that are created by our key light, but still making them look a bit more darker compared to the side of the key light. So we have the character having the left side as the key light. So the left side of the character, or the right side of the character for the character, and for us the left side is brighter compared to the right side, but we also want the right side to have a bit more light just to illuminate the darker areas, right? So for that, I'm going to create one more light here. So let's go to Arnold Lights, Area Light. I'll make this bigger. All right, so let's bring this over here. Bring this over here. Again, I want to make this go a little bit up. Slightly turn, not too much. All right. Now what I can do is I can actually give a different color just to have a bit of contrast and to give you a little idea of what this key light or fill light is actually doing. So I'll make this a bit yellowish. Okay, I'm not seeing much of the effect here. That's actually because I've turned off, or sorry, kept the normalize on. Let me just turn that off. Now you should see a lot of yellow spilling in the scene. Okay, so turn that off. Yes, there you can see. So that's the impact of the fill light here. Okay, so I think I will bring this a bit more closer here. All right. So what we can do is we can actually have a comparison between these guys. Let me just wait for this render to finish. So the yellowish highlights that you're seeing are actually being created by this fill light. All right, so we can actually turn off the fill light here. It's actually just 1. I'll just make this 0. So that's basically our key light. So let me just make a screenshot of this key light so that we will be able to compare these different lights once we are done with all of these lights. Let's give it some more time to just render out the entire scene. You can see there's a lot of grains and stuff which will be removed once we finish, once the complete rendering is finished. So you can see 86%, 87, 89, 90, there it is. Okay, so that's finished. Now let me just click on this little camera button. Okay, so that basically creates a snapshot here. Okay, so we can just click on this just to preview that snapshot. And I'm going to just turn that off once again. And now I want to make this intensity back to 1, and I want to give a little exposure as well. Let's see how that comes out. And I also want to turn off the key light. So let's make this 0 and 0. So you can see what was the effect of this fill light. I think I will just change this color from yellow to a bit more lighter color. closer to white. All right, so let's wait for this render to finish, and then I want to take a snapshot of that as well. All right, so let's hit snapshot once again. So there you go. So we can compare, this is our key light and this is our fill light. All right, so now let's just bring both of them back. So let's say turn this one on. I'll turn off my preview here. Okay, so bring this back to 2, and I want to give 1 here as well. All right, so the next light that we need to create is a rim light or a backlight. Okay, so it's also called as kicker light because it actually helps to separate the subject from the background. Okay, so to make the process much easier, I think I'll make these things 0. Even our fill light, I want to make them 0. All right, good. Let me just create one more light here. So let's go to Arnold, Lights, Area Light. Okay, so this light is going to go up and it is going to go exactly back. Okay, now this this kicker light is going to basically be behind the opposite side of the key light. So that means it's supposed to come from here to here. Let me just make this bigger. And it needs to point to the other direction. So let's rotate that all the way here. And I also want to turn off the normalize. There you go. Let me just make this go down. Also like so. And I think I'll just push this over here. Just rotate that like so. Rotate like so. So you can see that it basically creates a bit of rim here, okay? Just like a border, like an outline separating the background and the character. That looks good. And I think I'll give a exposure of 1. Yep. Or let me try giving 2 for the intensity. I think that looks good. Nice. Okay, so that's just the rim light. So let's just make a render or preview or screenshot just with the rim light. And you can see that all these 3 lights have shadows enabled, so that's why we are getting more of a realistic appearance at the end. All right, so let's click on screenshot. Good. So this is our key light, our fill light, and our kicker light. Okay, good. Now let's enable all of them together. So let me just make this intensity to be 2, exposure to be 1, and I need to just turn off my previews, snapshots, so I should be able to see the final results. So let's say intensity is going to be 1 for the fill light, maybe even 0.5 for the exposure. I think 0 is fine. So let's wait for the render. 16%. I'll speed it up. All right, so that's our final look. Let me just go ahead and snapshot that one. So that's our final look. Now, here's the thing. I also want to have a bit more brightness for the background. You can see that the background is too dark. So what I'll do is I will create one more light. Go to Arnold, Lights. There we have one more area light. So this one is going to be big as well. And I will pull this up. And I will rotate it like so. Okay, I think it doesn't have to be that big. I'll make it smaller. Maybe even smaller. So, but mainly I don't want to affect the shadows that we have here, but I want the background, the backdrop to have a bit more light. All right. Let me just turn off the normalize and see what kind of result we get. I'll turn this off. Yep, I think that looks perfect. Maybe this side is too dark, or one of the sides can be a bit darker. No problem. I'll pull this over here too. Yep, but we have a little bit of issue here. Because this light is too close to this object, we're having a bit more highlight here. Let's see. We'll fix that. All right, so let me just take a screenshot here and we can actually compare it with the previous one. So here it is, the new one that we rendered, and this is the old one. So you can see that the background looks better, much better than before, but we actually have a little bit highlight here. Okay, see, that's something that we don't want. This highlight is actually created because of this light that we have added extra. So now here's a little trick that we can do. We can actually tell Arnold to not affect this character only for this light. Okay, so all the other three lights can affect the character, but this one light should not affect the character. So what we can say is, we can tell this light, this is like light for background. So light, or let's say BG light. Okay, and I can also tell here this is going to be shape. Let's say plane. I'm gonna call this plane as BG. So we know, I'm just giving these names just to know, identify these guys to exclude them. Okay, so now what I'll do is I'll go to Windows and relationship editors. There we have something called light linking. So let's go to light centric here, and there I can say, where's our AI light? I renamed it, right? Okay, I renamed the shape anyways. So this is light 5. I'll go to light 5 here, and now you can see that this light is connected to all these other objects that we have. Okay, so you can see all these objects are being influenced by this light. Now what I'm going to say is, I'm going to say, okay light, you can influence only the background and not the other objects. So this is my background, and I'm just going to click on these other ones, okay, all of them, to say that these are not, these objects should not be influenced by this light. So I'll just click and drag all of them except the BG. Okay, so except the ground that we created. There it is. So all of them are being disassociated. And now if I go back, okay, so this is our preview, which have the highlight here. If I go back, you can see that it's already rendering, and you can see that this top area does not have the brighter highlight that was there before. So let's give him some time to render out. Now you can see that this render size, or this render frame, is basically decided in our render settings here. So if I go here, in preset we have this HD 540. So that's the resolution that we are rendering now. So once you are finished, you want to make a final render, final result, you can actually change this to a higher resolution, let's say HD 1080, or you can even go for a custom resolution as well. Okay, so this is our final look, and I want to make my final render as a 1080p. Okay, so HD 1080, so that it will render a higher resolution image, and we can save it once it is done.
living life, everyday, late at night, not okay. All I want, and I pray, all I need are some better days. Fuck me, I'm looking in the mirror, so foggy, but I've never seen clear.